Dear Journal, in the heart of the magical realm that is Disney World, where imagination knows no bounds, there exists a not often talked about theater show attraction that once graced the stages of Disney-MGM Studios. Join me on a nostalgic journey through time as we uncover the not so captivating story of Disney's Doug Life, a theatrical extravaganza that brought the beloved characters from the animated series Doug to life in a way that underwhelmed audiences and left an inerasable mark on the park's history. So without further ado, Pork Chop, wake up, go on, and start that intro. For context, I must go back a little bit to discuss a brief overview of Disney-MGM Studios, now known as Disney's Hollywood Studios, which is one of the 4 theme parks at Walt Disney World Resort. The idea of Disney-MGM Studios emerged in the late 1980s when then CEO Michael Eisner envisioned a working studio and theme park that would showcase the entertainment industry. The Walt Disney Company partnered with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios, or known as MGM Studios, to use the name and incorporate elements of the film industry into the park. Disney-MGM Studios officially opened its doors on May 1st, 1989, becoming the 3rd theme park at Walt Disney World Resort. The park featured a good array of attractions and shows that were meant to provide guests with behind-the-scenes glimpses into the world of filmmaking. Some of these attractions would include the Great Movie Ride, which took guests on a journey through classic movie scenes featuring animatronic figures and live-action performances, a motion simulator ride set in the Star Wars universe called Star Tours, Muppet Vision 3D, a 3D film featuring the Muppets combining 3D effects with in-theater practical effects and audio animatronics, Superstar Television, which was an interactive show experience in the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror that opened in 1994 and quickly became a park icon. But in that same year of '94, across the way, rival studios for kids television, Nickelodeon, would be ending one of their most popular shows, Doug. In the early 90s of Nicktoons, the first cartoon that was approved was Doug, created by Jim Jenkins, along with Rugrats and essentially Ren and Stimpy. However, after a compelling run on Nickelodeon decided to not renew Doug for a 5th season, with the last episode airing on Nickelodeon on January 2nd, 1994. So how did Doug's IP land in the hands of Disney? Well, through what would be deemed as a contractual loophole, the character rights of Doug went back to the creator Jim Jenkins. After shopping around with intent to continue his creation, well, in 1996, Disney purchased ABC. And with this acquisition, Michael Eisner wanted to create a block of shows for kids in which would be called Disney's One Saturday Morning on Saturday mornings, which Saturday morning cartoons were very popular during that time. An individual by the name of Geraldine Laybourne left Nickelodeon in 1996 to become the president of Disney ABC Television Group. Seeing firsthand from working at Nickelodeon how popular the animated series Doug was, she opted to bring Doug on over to Disney for a 5th season to be a part of Disney's One Saturday Morning on ABC. Being that it had been a couple of years since Doug aired new episodes on television, they essentially tried to age the show in real-life standards, that the show last aired in 1994 and would renew with the first episodes airing on September 7, 1996, naming the show to brand new Spanking Doug. See, with the exclamation point and being a purist for grammar and punctuation, I had to say it in the way that it was written. Anywho, they would change it to that name, change their clothes a bit, and would mature the characters some as if they had gotten older in the 2-year span since we last saw them. Doug would be running alright under Disney's umbrella as brand spanking new Doug for seasons 5 and 6. The show would be renewed for a 7th season, renaming the show to just simply Disney's Doug, in which this would become Doug's final season period, which aired on September 12, 1998. Attempting to capitalize on the overall award-winning Doug IP, although Disney's Doug was nowhere near as good as Doug on Nickelodeon, Disney had big plans for Doug as we would see Doug's impact expand to the parks in 1999. With Superstar Television, the opening day interactive show experience attraction, which had a run for 9 years, would be coming to an end. The only thing Disney saw fit to fill the void of Superstar Television's nearly 10-year residency was Doug, making it the first, if not the only Disney Channel animated series we'll see to be made into its own attraction. In need to make this happen, Disney wanted to bring the animated characters to real life through a live musical to be held at the former Superstar Television Theater and new for $19.99 ABC TV Theater at Disney-MGM Studios. Two gentlemen were approached to write the songs for the show. William Squire, who was familiar with Doug from watching it daily with his son when it was on Nickelodeon, and the other gentleman, Jeffrey Loden, who never heard of the show Doug at all till that point. According to Jeffrey Loden, the two were up against 5 other writer teams to write music for this Doug show. Therefore, William Squire and Jeffrey Loden began to write the first completely original musical for Walt Disney World, inspired by 3 episodes not from Disney's Doug, but based on 3 episodes from Doug on Nickelodeon. Side note, remember I mentioned that Disney's Doug wasn't that good, right? Well, it was good enough where Disney greenlit a Doug movie cleverly entitled Doug's First Movie, was set to open in theaters on March 26, 1999. In anticipation of the film, there was a premiere held at Disney-MGM Studios, where there was a massive parade full of celebrities such as Britney Spears, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, Will Friedle from Boy Meets World, and more. It was a real who's who of an event that saw the parade for the premiere and ultimately ended at the theater for the grand opening of the new live musical. The $6 million live musical show would creatively be called Doug Live and would open at Disney-MGM Studios on March 15, 1999. 30-minute long Doug Live would show 5 times a day starting after 10 a.m. The live show Doug Live would begin with Doug opening up a door in a dark room with the only light illuminating would come from the doorway in which Doug was standing in. This was a blend of the original opening intro sequence from Doug on Nickelodeon, blended with the different sounding updated theme music from Disney's Doug version. The opening sequence ends with Doug and his dog Porkchop laying in Doug's room, with Doug writing in his journal as he always did to open up an episode. In this, he paints the scene for us that he just moved from Bloatsburg a year ago to 21 Jumbo Street, which is in Bluffington, and that he was doodling in his journal. He turns to Porkchop and asks if he remembers. Porkchop having no recollection of these past events, Doug decides to take it all the way back for our viewing pleasure. They are beginning our first musical number describing these events, giving us an introduction to his best friend Skeeter Valentine, his crush Patty Mayonnaise, and his arch nemesis bully, Roger Klotz, along with the general introduction to all the other kids at the school. To our surprise, on the large journal on the set that displayed what Doug was describing from the actual memories he's singing from his journal, 3 live 3-dimensional characters, Skeeter, Roger, and Patty, pop out of the pages and grace the stage to sing along with Doug. Doug wonders why some things happen to people such as himself, that he just so happened to have moved to Bluffington, and on his first day there, he met Patty Mayonnaise. He mentions that he's been trying to get her to notice him, but he greatly belittles himself with low self-esteem, stating,
"I'm just another dopey shoes, floppy shorts, green vest and white t-shirt wearing kind of guy."
Doug then hopes that Patty would mention that one of the best things to ever happen to the world would be Doug's existence in Bluffington. Then boom, we head right into the second half of our first musical number, led by Patty, with Doug closing the musical sequence, asking if Porkchop remembers, where Porkchop responds in a so-so manner.
Now do you get the picture? No, man.
In continuation to sum up the plot of Doug Live, Doug has a book called The Really Big Book of Dating for Boys. Skeeter then interrupts on the scene, forming the second parallel plot to the show that the Beats, only the best band in the world loosely based off of the Beatles, were reuniting for a concert. Doug would win 2 concert tickets from a radio station, with hopes of asking his crush to the concert. Patty actually heard Doug win the tickets on the radio and asks does he know who he's going to go to the concert with. He hesitates to get the words out to ask Patty, and Roger pops in and shows that he has 2 tickets to the concert and asks before Doug does, where Patty then says yes to Roger. In his head, Doug confides in his journal yet again that he felt that everyone was laughing at him for being such a coward for not asking Patty to the concert. So to feel better, Doug yelps out for his imaginary superhero alter ego Quailman.
Quailman, strange prisoner from planet Bob. He darts, he weaves, he wears his underwear on top of his pants.
Come on, they're power briefs. Patience, intelligence, grace, and speed. Powers that covey of elders to creed. Clearly a hero will always prevail. Equipped with the qualities of
which he analyzes how Quailman would save the day and display heroism. He also switches to one of the other characters in his mind, Smash Adams.
But words can never hurt me. Losing self-esteem must become someone else.
And so, to stave off certain peril, the humiliated Quailman transforms himself into Smash Adams, suave and debonair spy, an international personality.
A 007 James Bond type character, all while dressed as Quailman, might I add. Utterly making this an inception of Dougs for the audience, who might just be part guests who were unfamiliar with the animated series. In the midst of this Quailman sequence, a kid handpicked from the audience during the pre-show would come out on the stage deemed as Quail Kid, giving Quailman courage by stating that they believe in him.
Quailman, I believe in you!
Although Quail Kid's faith wasn't good enough, Quailman needed additional belief from the audience.
Thanks, kid. But I'm afraid you're too late. My quail powers are all but completely drained. If there were only a few more people who believed.
Everywhere around the world, and especially in the ABC TV theater at the Disney-MGM Studios, everyone who had ever believed in Quailman began to clap and cheer.
Doug snaps back to reality when Skeeter asks if Doug is ready to go, since he gave the tickets instead to Skeeter, since he wasn't going with Patty Mayonnaise, and Skeeter then elects to take Doug to the concert. Doug and Skeeter would then arrive at the concert stating, "Look at all these people," while walking in the audience emulating as if they were at the actual concert. The concert would eventually start with the Beats performing live on stage, with Roger bum rushing the stage to inevitably find himself escorted off by security. The Beats in the show would perform exactly 30 seconds of a song. Then the great concert would be over, which I do understand why for time's sake. I mean, this was already a 30-minute show. Doug and Skeeter would celebrate, hyped after seeing the best beat blowout ever, till Patty finds them and they ask her if she enjoyed the concert too as well. Then she replies,
It was a little short though.
and how Roger thought that they were on a date, Patty describing what a date would actually be like, and Doug singing another song leading to the conclusion of the troupe singing in an outro to bring it on home. There would be a total of 5 original songs performed during the stage show, with performances aforementioned 5 times a day, 7 days a week. Across the way after the show in the gift shop, the guests could find Doug Live souvenirs of a Doug Live pin, Red Hots that were mentioned in the live show, and a lunchbox. The show ran throughout the end of the 90s, now into the year 2000. The show wasn't without its flaws and issues. The show originally ran too long, where 11 original songs were written for Doug Live, but it was compressed down to 5 original songs.
Yo, Doug! Man, you're not gonna believe this! They're reuniting for a concert! Who is? Only the coolest rock and roll band in the history of the world?
Well, the Beats broke up.
Yeah, but they're reuniting so they can break up again after their final farewell concert.
Oh, that was last year.
Yeah, but this is their really, no kidding final farewell concert. It's all over the radio. Tickets sold out in 1 second.
Oh, man, that's fast.
That's right, Rooney. You, Doug! Man, you're not gonna believe this. The coolest rock and roll band in the history of the world is reuniting for a concert.
The Beats? That's right, Rudy.
Disney higher power-ups that be would remove the core essence of the musical being the writers. They were told that their work was through, and Disney took over and added their own touch and elements to the show, such as adding a guest from the audience as Quail Kid, among other things. William Squire and Jeffrey Loden weren't invited to the parade nor the opening day festivities, although they were eventually invited to come see the show and did eventually go and see it at Disney-MGM Studios.
We were not part, and this is one of the sad things, is we were told when our work was done, our work was done. You know, we were work for hire, and we were not invited to the opening day. We were not there for the parade that happened, that led to the theater. We were invited to come down and see the show, so we got to see it. But it would have been nice to share it with everyone.
That's such a shame.
But when we did eventually go to see it,
It actually was a wild day.
As mentioned, guests would be taken on a 30-minute long voyage of a decreasingly popular animated series that was losing its flair that stemmed through a plot that might have been confusing to parkgoers, especially to die-hard Disney fans who might have been unfamiliar with the genesis of Doug dating back to the early 90s on Nickelodeon. And I know, you've been waiting for me to mention the difficulties of translating 2D animation to the live stage with the set design, costumes, and the characters themselves. And to my response to that is yes. Although the set design was actually kind of impressive for what it was, as somewhat simplistic as it was. They were able to add more characters in the show via 2D on the screen if and when they wanted to, along with that pretty cool opening 2D to 3D character reveal of Patty, Skeeter, and Roger. You can tell that's where the budget went. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say what you all have been thinking. Fine. Respectfully, the transition from 2D animation to the live stage was atrocious, to say so the least. There's really not much I can really say. I mean, There became fading interest in the show Disney's Doug, along with the live musical Doug Live. Doug's first movie did eventually come out on March 26, 1999, right after the debut of Disney's MGM Studios' Doug Live. Doug's first movie would receive mixed reviews just as Doug Live did. Doug's first movie would have a budget of $5 million, $1 million less than the live musical, and will gross $19.4 million in the box office. This wasn't enough for Disney to grant Doug a second movie, therefore making Doug's first movie his first and very last movie to grace the silver screen. Disney's Doug was nominated for a Daytime Emmy in 1999. Season 7 of Disney's Doug would air and would be Doug's final season, ending on June 26, 1999. After a little over 2 years of shows, performances, songs, laughter, and the occasional nightmare fuel, Doug Live would eventually close for good at Disney-MGM Studios, with the last performance being on May 12, 2001. With the vacancy of Doug Live in the ABC TV theater, this would see Get Happy with ABC, a show which presented for a limited time, a 25-minute show that promoted upcoming TV shows for the fall 2002 season that ran in the ABC TV theater from July 1, 2002 to October 5, 2002. The theater would remain idle for 7 years till the ABC TV theater would eventually be renamed again back to Superstar Television Theater in 2009 for what would be based off an idolizing cultural phenomenon that was sweeping the US through the early 2000s. Although Doug Live didn't fully see the praise that Disney expected, better yet that creator Jim Jenkins sought fit for the attraction, Doug was a passion creation by Jim Jenkins based off of Jim Jenkins' life. Jenkins admits that he did wear power briefs like Quail Man in his youth pretending to be a superhero. He didn't have a friend named Skeeter, but he had a best friend just like him though, in that he did have a bully in his hometown named Roger. Doug is Jim and Jim is Doug. According to Jim Jenkins in an interview with the Orlando Sentinel in 1999, he mentioned that the multicolored skins represent diversity. The round features create friendlier, more comfortable characters, although it didn't necessarily translate three-dimensionally on stage. Although this show failed at its attempt to capture the essence of Bluffington's charm, never forget the enduring impact of the experimentation of Doug Live on Disney-MGM Studios history. The lesson we can take away from Doug Live is to never be afraid to take risks, that there's no such thing truly as failure unless you never even try. And remember that you can't be anyone else but yourself, because everyone else is already taken.
Doug! Be yourself! Cool thing!
Hey, why do you think they call it a theme park?